There is no true knowledge but by the light of presence, and presence is a light that dawns only upon the purified heart. In the opening movements of Hikmat al-Ishraq, Shahab al-Din Suhrawardi does not begin with dry definitions or syllogisms. He begins with light, not as a metaphor, but as the foundation of reality, as the first principle of being, and as the source of all knowledge. To understand, he tells us, one must be illuminated, not merely informed, not simply taught. Illumination requires inner purity, spiritual discipline, and above all, presence. Presence to the light that is before all things, the light of lights, the Nur al-Anwar. Suhrawardi's philosophy is revolutionary in its fusion of philosophy and mysticism. He challenges the primacy of rational demonstration alone. Reason, he says, is a tool, but it is not sufficient to access the highest truths. The intellect may guide the seeker to the threshold, but it is intuition, illumination, and the light of inner vision that carries the soul across. On the nature of light, all existence, according to Suhrawardi, is graded light. The cosmos is a hierarchy of illuminations, light upon light, descending from the absolute self-sufficient light down to the obscurities of material existence, which he describes as darkness by comparison. This metaphysics is not metaphorical. For Suhrawardi, light is substance. It is the very essence of being. What does not partake in light, what cannot receive or reflect it, is non-being or Adam. From this perspective, knowledge itself becomes the act of light, becoming aware of light. True understanding arises when the knower is illuminated by the presence of what is known. This is not learned through abstraction, but through direct, unveiled experience, what Suhrawardi calls al-Hudur, presence. The conditions of illumination. But how does one become illuminated? The answer, Suhrawardi implies, is not found in academic rigor, but in spiritual discipline. The seeker must undergo purification. The heart must be cleansed of attachments, distractions, and impurities that cloud its receptivity. Knowledge of the highest order, Suhrawardi insists, is not passive. It is a radiation, a light that dawns, and the soul must be prepared to witness its rising. This is why Suhrawardi's system is often called a philosophia perennis, a perennial philosophy that recognizes truth not as a construction of reason, but as a reality disclosed in states of heightened awareness. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Against pure rationalism, Suhrawardi does not reject logic. Rather, he repositions it. Rational argumentation has its place, but it cannot penetrate the inner sanctum of truth. Those who rely on logic alone, he says, are like men who study the anatomy of the eye, but have never seen the sun. Thus, Suhrawardi challenges the Aristotelian and Avicennian traditions, which emphasize syllogistic deduction. He does not discard them, but he completes them by turning toward gnosis, toward inner vision, and toward the metaphysics of light. In doing so, he inaugurates an entirely new school of thought, Al-Hikmat al-Ishraq, the Illuminationist. Wisdom. Existence is but light, and all that is exists by degrees of light, flowing from the first light that knows no other. In the second unfolding of Suhrawardi's vision, we step beyond the epistemology of illumination into the ontology of light itself. Here, light is no longer only the condition of knowledge, it is the substance of all being. Everything that exists is graded by its proximity to the light of lights, the absolute, self-sufficient source of all reality. This is not a metaphor. It is not poetry. It is metaphysics expressed in a luminous key. The first light, Nur al-Anwar, the summit of existence, stands the first light, Nur al-Anwar, the light of lights. It is self-subsisting without need, purely actual, with no admixture of darkness or deficiency. This is not a created being. It is being itself. and its light is not derived but infinite and original. Suhrawardi's metaphysics therefore does not begin with substance, nor with essence and existence divided as Avicenna had proposed. It begins with light, not just as a metaphor for being, but as being. This light, being self-sufficient, does not need anything beyond itself. But it is active, and through its sheer perfection, it gives rise to other lights through a process of illumination. The emanation of lights. From the first light emanates a series of pure, immaterial lights, intellects or archangelic lights, al-Anwar al-Mujarrada. These lights are not equal in their reception of the original illumination. They are ranked, each receiving less light than the one above, and in turn giving rise to yet dimmer lights. This gives rise to what Suhrawardi calls the ontological hierarchy of being, a great chain of lights descending from the purest to the most veiled. Below the archangelic lights are the governing lights, who rule over the celestial spheres, and below them still are the souls of human beings, rational, but darkened, weighed down by the obscurities of bodily existence, and at the very bottom of the hierarchy is matter, pure darkness, not evil in itself, but privation, the furthest removed from the light of lights. In this view, darkness is not a positive force, but the absence of light, just as cold is the absence of heat. Evil and imperfection do not have independent being. They are the shadows cast by the withdrawal or absence of illumination, the structure of the cosmos. Thus, the cosmos is not a random collection of substances, but a luminal architecture, a vertical hierarchy of illumination, the first light, Nur al-Anwar, the intellects, pure lights, the souls, luminescent but mixed, the bodies, opaque, veiling light, and matter, darkness itself. Each level of being exists by virtue of its relation to light, and every ascent is a return to light, the human being in the ladder of light. Where then stands the human being? For Suhrawardi, the human soul is a light imprisoned in darkness. It belongs not to the material world, but to the world of immaterial lights. Its true homeland is the higher realm, the world of lights, al-Anwar, from which it has fallen into the shadows of embodiment. Our senses give us only the world of surfaces, the visible and the opaque. But the eye of the heart, once awakened and purified, can begin to discern the radiant architecture of reality. It can trace the path upward, back to the source. This ascent is not merely intellectual, it is existential and mystical. One must become light again. One must shed darkness, cleanse the soul, and rise through degrees of self-illumination, until the soul stands in the presence of the light of lights, no longer by report, but by direct, unveiled witnessing, the illuminative hierarchy as a spiritual map. In this sense, Suhrawardi's cosmology is also a spiritual cartography. It is a map for the soul. The hierarchy of light is not only the structure of the world, it is the path the soul must climb. This is the ladder of ascent, the mirage of the intellect and the heart, the journey of every seeker who turns away from the veil of appearances toward the sun of reality. But this ascent is not for all. It requires discipline, contemplation, moral purification, and a relentless yearning for light. As Suhrawardi says, the darknesses are many, but the light is one, and in its presence all shadows are undone. The Orient is not a place on the map. It is the realm of pure light, the homeland of the soul, from which it descended and to which it longs to return. In this third movement of Suhrawardi's illuminative symphony, the metaphysical vision takes on allegorical colors, and the universe is interpreted not only as a hierarchy of light, but as a symbolic landscape, where direction, distance, and journey no longer refer to space, but to the states of the soul, The Orient, al-Mashriq, in Suhrawardi's symbolic language, is not merely the east of geography. It is the east of the spirit, the source of all illumination, the metaphysical dawn from which the lights of being emerge. The Orient becomes a cipher for transcendence, for divine proximity, and for the place from which true knowledge is born. The allegory of exile and return, every soul, in its embodied state, is portrayed as an exile from the Orient, a traveler, lost in the West, the realm of obscurity and distance. The West, al-Maghrib, is where the sun of reality has set, where the soul, veiled by the body, lives in forgetfulness of its true origin. To live in the West is to live in separation from the source, from light, from one's essential self. Yet this is not the end of the story. For Suhraward, the human condition is not only one of exile, but also of yearning and return. Thus, life becomes a journey from west to east, a spiritual migration, hijrah, not of the body, but of the soul through inner purification, contemplative discipline, and divine recollection. The allegory is clear. The Orient symbolizes illumination, divine proximity, and the world of pure lights. The West stands for obscuration, corporeality, and forgetfulness. The traveler is the soul, and the journey is the path of awakening, the world of ideas. A luminous topography, Suhraward, revives and reimagines the Platonic doctrine of archetypes. He calls them Suwar Nuriya, the luminous forms, eternal realities that exist in the world of light, prior to all material instantiations. In this geography of the soul, the material world is but a shadow, a screen upon which the forms cast their radiance. True knowledge, therefore, is not gained by empirical observation alone, but by illuminative unveiling, a direct encounter with the luminous ideas that dwell in the higher realm. This realm, the Herkalya world, from Suhrawardi's imaginative cosmology, is a barzakh, a liminal world between the sensory and the intelligible. It is accessible not through the five senses, but through imaginative vision purified by spiritual discipline. It is here that the mystic sees angels, hears the music of light, and perceives the spiritual architecture of the cosmos. This is the realm of archetypes, of celestial realities, and of inner unveiling. The role of the active imagination, unlike some philosophers who dismiss imagination as lower than reason, Suhraward assigns it a noble place. For him, the active imagination, al-Quwwa al-Mutakayyila, becomes a bridge between the intelligible lights and the sensory world. When illumined, the imagination becomes a vessel of revelation, through dreams, visions, symbols, and mystical insight. The awakened soul does not merely reason about truth. It beholds it through images more radiant than logic, more real than argument. In this respect, Suhraward is a precursor to later thinkers like Ibn Arab, Mulla Sadra, and even modern phenomenologists of sacred experience. He affirms that truth is not reducible to concepts. It also speaks in symbols, images, lights, and silences. The lighted path, from shadow to source. The inner geography, Suhraward outlines, is thus not an abstract system, but a spiritual map for the seeker. The body is the cave, the soul is the captive light within, the Orient is the source of being, the luminous forms are the guiding stars, and the path is inner illumination, an ascent through introspection, moral refinement, and gnosis. In this path, every station is a degree of light, and every veil removed reveals a new horizon, until the soul, now fully luminous, beholds the light that had always shone behind the veils of matter and ego. When the soul awakens from its slumber in the West, it sees that the Orient never left. It had only turned its gaze away. The light of the sages is not from the fire of this world, nor from the sun of the sky. It is a hidden sun, one that rises in the heart when the veil is lifted. In this chapter of Hikmat al-Ishraq, Suhrawardi turns to the profound and subtle topic of prophecy, not as a mere historical phenomenon, but as a metaphysical necessity, a bridge between the unseen and the seen, and a radiant beacon guiding humanity from darkness toward the realm of light. This is not prophecy as political power, nor simply law-giving, but as illumination, intuition, and divine gnosis. And it is here that Suhrawardi reveals his synthesis of Avicennian metaphysics, Platonic idealism, and the mystical reality of spiritual transmission. The necessary existence of prophets and sages, Suhrawardi affirms that the world cannot be rightly navigated by reason alone. Human intellect, as brilliant as it is, remains partial, discursive, and limited by the senses. It is prone to error, misjudgment, and illusion. Thus, to reach the true and the real, al-Haq, we require a light higher than reason, a light that comes not from deduction, but from illumination, Ishraq. This is the light that shines in the hearts of the Anbiya, prophets, and Hukama, illumined sages. Just as the sun governs the rhythm of physical life, so too the light of prophecy governs the moral, intellectual, and spiritual life of humanity. This light is not man-made. It is divine, transmitted, and anchored in the higher world of lights. Without it, the world would be a night without a moon, a wandering without a guide. The hierarchy of lights and the angel of revelation in Suhrawardi's metaphysical vision, all reality is a gradation of lights. At the summit is Nur al-Anwar, the light of lights, pure and undivided, identical to the divine. Below it cascade the archangelic lights, chief among them being Gabriel, Ruh al-Quds, who serves as the intermediary between the divine intellect and the human recipient. Revelation, then, is not a metaphor nor a poetic claim. It is a real transmission, an actual tajal, or manifestation of light from a higher plane, descending upon the purified heart of the prophet. The prophet is the mirror polished so perfectly that it can reflect the light of the angel, and when that light enters the world, it becomes scripture, law, wisdom, and guidance, tailored to the people, place, and time. But while prophets receive light by direct unveiling, the sages receive it by contemplation, purification, and love. Of the real, they do not invent and they remember. They do not legislate, they interpret. Yet both prophet and sage are nourished by the same eternal spring, illumination versus abstraction. This doctrine, Suhrawardi insists, differs sharply from the pure rationalism of the peripatetic Mashriqi philosophers. Whereas they build truth through syllogism, Suhrawardi seeks immediate disclosure, knowledge that is felt, not merely thought, beheld, not merely deduced. This is why he grounds his philosophy in dark, taste, the intimate and direct experience of the real. To understand prophecy without tasting this light is to miss its essence entirely. Hence, in the Ishraq framework, the authority of the prophet stems not from force or politics, but from the purity of his light, which is both epistemic and ontological. He knows because he is luminous, and he guides because he illuminates. The reappearance of the light, saints and friends of God. Though prophetic revelation is sealed, Suhrawardi affirms that the light continues to shine in the world through the awliya, the friends of God. These are the souls who, by discipline, inner refinement, and divine favor, have become vessels of the hidden sun. They are not lawmakers. They are mirrors, reflecting the perennial wisdom of the Orient. Through them, hikmah, wisdom, remains alive. Through them, the Ishraq tradition is sustained. Indeed, Suhrawardi's own role as a philosopher, mystic, and martyr must be seen in this light. He positions himself as an heir to the light of prophecy, not through direct revelation, but through the visionary faculty, illumination, and recollection of eternal truths. In the end, light is the measure of truth for Suhrawardi. The criterion of knowledge is not argument but light. Every truth is luminous, and what is not luminous is not truth. Therefore, any claim, whether philosophical, scientific, or spiritual, must be weighed against this measure. Does it illuminate the soul? Does it unveil reality? Does it lead the traveler eastward toward the source? In this vision, prophecy, philosophy, and mysticism converge. All become rays of the same light, seeking the same dawn, speaking with different voices, but pointing to the same orient of truth. He who carries the light will always be a stranger in the land of shadows, but the stranger is not lost. He is awaited by the dawn. In this final and solemn part, we enter the lived reality of Suhrawardi's Illuminationist vision, not only as philosophy, but as sacrifice, witness, and resistance to darkness. The legacy of the Hikmat al-Ishraq is not merely a treatise of metaphysical light, but a testimony, carved in exile, sealed in blood, and handed down in silence and brilliance. To walk the path of light is to be exiled from the comfort of shadows, and Suhrawardi knew this, lived this, and died by it. The philosopher martyr, a life for the truth, Shahab al-Din. Suhrawardi was not simply a metaphysician. He was a man who embodied his teachings, and in doing so threatened the established order of scholastic orthodoxy and political power. Born in Persia, his wandering led him across lands and schools, absorbing Greek wisdom, Sufi vision, and Persian mysticism. But it was in Aleppo, under the protection of the Ayyubid prince al-Malik al-Zahir, the son of Saladin, that his fate was sealed. His teachings, bold, esoteric, and radiant, aroused suspicion, even fear. His claim that the light of the sages was not confined to the past, and that spiritual hierarchy remained alive beyond traditional religious authority, was incendiary. Ultimately, under pressure from the orthodox scholars of the time, he was imprisoned. And in the year 1191, at the age of 36, he was executed by order of the political powers, with the blessing of religious jurists. Thus, the master of illumination became the martyr of light. Exile of the light. Why darkness kills. Why would a philosopher be killed for speaking of light? Because Suhrawardi's vision was subversive, not in violence but in spiritual sovereignty. He taught that true authority lies not in inherited structures, but in interior illumination, not in words, but in direct unveiling. He called seekers away from outer ritual alone and toward inner awakening, from doctrine to dawn. This is dangerous to systems that feed on conformity, not awakening. Darkness cannot abide light, because light dissolves its illusions. Thus, Suhrawardi was silenced by the very forces he unmasked: the misuse of religious authority, the fear of free thought, and the political weaponization of theology. But his death was not an end. It was a signal fire. For in dying he proved that the light survives the body, that truth does not end in a tomb, that illumination, once born, cannot be extinguished. The Eastern dawn, beyond East and West. Suhrawardi dreamed of a spiritual Orient, not a place on the map, but a metaphysical direction. The Mashriq al-Anwar, the Orient of Lights, is the inner world where all truth begins, the point where the divine light first rises over the soul. It is to this Orient that all true seekers turn. In Hikmat al-Ishraq, he seeks to reorient philosophy, away from pure abstraction and into a luminous mode of seeing, a fusion of Plato's visionary forms, Zoroastrian angelology, Islamic metaphysics, and Sufi taste. In this synthesis, Suhrawardi recovers a wisdom that had long been buried, the knowledge that the real is light, and that to know is to see, not merely to reason, And though the West turned toward empirical science and the East toward scholastic, rigidity, Suhrawardi, calls both to turn inward, to remember the Orient within, where illumination awaits. The legacy of Ishraq, a light that lives. After his death, Suhrawardi's works were quietly preserved by mystics and esoteric schools. His influence spread into Persian philosophy, Shiite thought, and later Sufism. The Hikmat al-Ishraq became a secret current, flowing beneath the surface, illuminating hearts in silence. In the centuries that followed, thinkers like Mullah Sadra, Haidar Amallah, and others would draw from his light, reviving the path of illumination. Even today, Suhrawardi's message echoes to all seekers. Do not settle for shadows. Seek the sun that rises within. Let your soul remember its homeland, the world of light. Final reflection: to carry the light, to read Martyr Hikmat al-Ishraq, is not just to understand a doctrine, it is to hear a call to awaken, to remember, to see. A call to resist the dullness of inherited dogma and to recover. The primordial light that dwells at the heart of all being, but the path is costly. It may demand exile, loneliness, even death, yet the reward is priceless, a seeing that never dims, a knowing that no darkness can undo. Suhrawardi did not merely teach the light, he became it, and in that becoming he opened the way for all who yearn to return. The way of Ishraq is not over. It begins anew with each soul who dares to look eastward.